everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. It was intended to be three of us. We had hoped that Caleb would join us, but unfortunately he fell ill today. So please get well quick there, brother.
Send him all your tots and pears.
Yeah. All your positive karma.
Yes.
I like
Reiki
karma. Yeah.
Reiki from here. Just Reiki him.
But we felt good enough. Unfortunately, we were having a lot of technical issues when we were coming on to the stream here. So we think we've worked them out to some degree. Steve sounds a little different. Apparently, I sound a little different from normal. But at least the pictures and the audio are not repeating, and they're in sync. So let's hope for the best.
Hopefully, yeah. I've gone through two different mics, and actually three. I've gone through three different mics, and then the fourth mic. This is the sound you're getting with the fourth mic. So, yeah.
I'm always telling people, headset, baby, the headset. You can't go wrong. I've never had problems, ever. Get one from your company. They're free, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and they're terrible.
Of course they're terrible, but for these purposes, they work. This is what they're made for.
Normally, everything else works, but oh well, it is what it is.
It is a backup. Listen to me, I'm the boss.
But yeah.
And for people who don't know, Steve seriously does call me boss. I mean, that's what he calls me. So, because I am a little bossy, I guess.
Bossy.
I am a little bossy, you know. I'm like Spanky from the Little Rascals, you know. And then as I grew up, I really became Spanky, but I do have a little bit of that vibe. I freely admit that.
You just need one of those little hats.
I did have a beanie hat with a propeller. In college, I think we were in Georgetown for the weekend, and there was a shop, and like all these, bunch of drunk guys just like went in and were like, I want that hat. So at least for a brief period of time, I did have one of those.
It's such an odd hat. I don't understand where it came from, but it's like the image of nerddom from like the 40s through like the early 60s.
Yeah, but I don't really think that was nerdy though. I think that was like actually like hip.
Was it?
Yeah,
it was hip. It wasn't hip. It was hip.
Because you see them like in college where they have like like the fraternity brothers with the beaver coats, and they have it.
Yeah, but they didn't have the propellers though. But they had the hat, but it didn't have like a little propeller on it. So I'm wondering where the propeller kind of.
Really don't care enough to really research this. I don't.
We need to get to the bottom of this now.
We have other stuff to talk about. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, Eternals. I actually went to the movie theater. Third time this year I went to the movie theater. Had a cinema-safe experience at 11:30 in the morning on a Sunday. And
you know what?
When I went,
best time to go is early morning on a Sunday or like Monday evening. We've got one person piping in here.
Hey, James.
Figueredo. Hey, James. Good evening, handsome boss. I mean, bears. Aw.
Yeah. I have to apologize for the light because the gray is coming back, as you can see here, and like the light is like right on the part in my hair, so it's almost like a skunky thing, which looks kind of like okay, but I don't know, it's a little distracting as I'm watching this. But what can you do? What can you do? So we'll be talking about Eternals. And we will also be talking about some comic book stuff that we've been reading. In some cases enjoying, in some cases not so much. But we're trying to keep it light and fun, and we hope to do it when we talk about that material as well. So since some of the Geek Gets tie into things that we'll be talking about later, Steve, what were some of your Geek Gets this week?
Well, so one thing that I did get, because I do a lot of random Kickstarters that just come in months after I've supported them, and usually have no idea what it was or where it came from. But this one I do remember because Caleb was the person who let me know about it when it was coming, and that is issue number 1 of Mechaton, which was a Kickstarter from a couple months ago, from several people, and in fact, our good friend Mayday Trip did contribute to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great little story. It was a lot of fun. I laughed. I thought it was really well put together. It's a really great quality book. And this version came with a little postcard thing, which I thought was really cute. And then, because a couple of the McDonald's around me still have them, I got a few more of the Eternals toys, which are so weird and so bizarrely shaped. But these are very similar to the other Marvel Cinematic Universe ones that they've come out with over the past couple of years. And actually, and like I'd shown before, the bases do fit together. They all interlock with previous ones too. But these have an interesting thing. You can put them on like your cell phone or something bright to light up, and they have little things that light up. But this is apparently Gilgamesh, and then this is Druig.
Okay.
Watch him wave, just sort of wiping the table, keeping it clean for the other guy. I don't know. I also have an Icarus somewhere around here as well.
Okay.
And the previous ones. But yeah, so what'd you get?
I did get Icarus.
Yeah.
So I got him, and I also got Fastos.
Oh, Fastos.
It's still bagged. You got me a little worried there about they still have them. So the clock is ticking. It's usually like a 3 to 4 week window that you can get these, but also with a film that is, however you look at it, is underperforming a little bit at the theaters.
A little.
We might be getting those damn Scooby-Doo toys again.
Ugh, I hope not. Well, it's funny. And actually, it has been doing relatively well compared to some of the other movies that have been out. There haven't been a lot of competition. Yeah. The last big movie was Venom 2, of course, which is actually one of the highest debuts historically, not just pandemic, COVID era, but pre-COVID era as well. It's one of the biggest debuts. So that was kind of like the only other competition I think it's had over the past several weeks. But even that, it's been out for 6 weeks now. So the Eternals kind of was in a good position, I think, compared to other movies.
Yeah,
this weekend
it still beat the competition this week too.
Oh yeah,
I think the closest was Clifford.
Yeah, Clifford. Yeah. And then this weekend it is the new Ghostbusters movie. So there's finally something that's like general appeal competition that could probably dethrone it as the new number 1. But yeah, I mean it performed relatively well. It's not breaking any records, but it's not terribly underperforming. So it's kind of in the mid range.
Okay, before we move though, I do have another geek get that I want to show off. And if people know me, they know one of my favorite franchises is Black Hawk. Yeah. And through the store that's in the next town over, Dr. Wonders, I was able to get for a ridiculously low price 3 Black Hawk issues from the 1950s. These were before they were published by DC. In fact, this is the last. Nope, this one is the last issue, number 107, before the property transferred from Quality Comics to DC Comics. Right. So we have number 63, number 91, and number 107, ranging from 1953 to 1958, I think, 57 or 58. And I instantly doubled the number of quality Blackhawks that I have, the pre-DC era. And whether they're considered golden age, I think is debatable. There's some people that consider like almost any 10-cent book golden age, but you also have silver, unquestionably with the Flash number 4, with Showcase number 4 starring the Flash. That's generally considered the start of the Silver Age. I have them. These are not easy to come by, and
No, and not for the price that you got them at either.
no. So, thank you very much, Wally and Adrian, for looking out for me. And if it happens again, you know who to talk to. I also have, because I've been watching the diet, and McDonald's was problematic. Um, it was nice to know that even on the apple slices bag, and this is just because that you do have Faustus and Thena on the apple slices bag that come with the Eternals Happy Meals.
Because why not?
Because yes.
Why not? It's branded. It's branded.
All right, well, let's go through what the plot of Eternals was and some of the background information. Again, huge cast, and directed by oh God, why am I
Chloe Zhao.
Chloe Zhao. Why I just had it right in
Yeah.
front of me. Which was who won the Oscar last year for Nomadland.
Yeah.
And well, I'm gonna stop talking. I'll let you talk for a bit, talk about the plot and some of the actors involved, and then we'll talk about what we thought about it.
Oh yeah, we'll have to sound off on the actors. I'm curious how many you can rattle off, because the Eternals. This group of Eternals is 10. So this is actually one of the bigger teen casts for an MCU movie that we've had. Most of them are usually around like 5 to 7, but like this is a full 10 characters that you had to get introduced to. Which we'll talk about while they do that. But so the basic plot, it starts off by letting us know that the Celestials were there before the universe was created, and the Celestials basically help create life throughout the universe. And in order for them to maintain the balance and to protect life, they send Eternals from the planet Olympia to different planets with developing intelligent life, so that they can protect the populace from the evil and twisted and really kind of interestingly designed deviants that go and attack and kill the intelligent populations. And so our team of Eternals, led by Ajak, arrive on the planet Earth about 7,000 years ago and promptly save a small village from attacking deviants. And from that start, we're slowly introduced to all 10 of the Eternals, and see where they are in the modern era. So there's a lot of time jumping back and forth. So we get a lot of flashbacks as they develop throughout human history, and then also where they are now. And of course, the main plot is taking place now. You've got Cersei, who lives in London. Her boyfriend is this really nice guy who looks kind of familiar if you've ever seen Game of Thrones or possibly Pompeii, played by Kit Harington. She has a roommate, Sprite, who's clearly also another one of the Eternals, and they witness the return of the deviants in London. They get attacked by a very strange deviant indeed. And we're also reintroduced to Icarus, who is the former sort of like second lieutenant or second leader of the Eternals. And they think, hey, we've got the deviants back, so we've got to go and find Ajax. Things don't go well when they go looking for Ajax, and so they figure out they have to bring everybody back together, all the Eternals back together, to try and figure out what's going on, where these deviants are coming from, and also what's causing these strange earthquakes that are happening throughout the world. It's a very interesting, really well told, I think, a really well plotted introduction or reintroduction of all these characters, as well as flashing back to sort of what broke them all up originally in human history, and this kind of action bringing them all back together gives everybody a chance to kind of shine. Every one of the Eternals gets their own kind of spotlight to see where they are now and what struggles they're going through and what their life is like. Really great, wonderful cast, really huge. And then, of course, you have the big, giant final battle, which one of the criticisms, obviously, is that one of the villains, or what we think is the main villain, really is kind of disappointing. But other than that, I think this really tells an extremely small part of a very cosmic story, and just kind of gives us a little wedge into something that could be enormous when it comes to the MCU. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great. What did you think, Bill?
As I have problems with unmuting, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. I do think that the 157-minute running time is somewhat problematic, but it was frustrating because I think of scenes where they, just for some background, Icarus and Cersei were married,
Hmm.
and the love story depictions were quite beautiful. It
Hmm.
was, but I don't know how necessary to the storyline of having that much material based around their relationship was necessary. So I do think some of the criticisms of the running time are valid. I think that's always problematic when you do have a cast that's this big.
Yeah.
And it's also weird because it almost feels like a cast without an antagonist until a certain point,
Hmm.
which is hard to pull off. I think they basically did that. They
Yeah.
basically did that pretty well.
Well,
Um,
they didn't have like a primary antagonist
mm,
for a while. I think that's the big thing. It was just sort of like the deviants. These monsters are the bad guys, but there's not
yeah,
really a connective tissue for
to,
quite a big chunk of the
uh,
movie until you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I loved that the team is not the same age. That there's,
Hmm.
it's great that we have diversity in terms of sexuality and people of color. I also love when there's diversity of age,
Hmm.
and you have Sprite, who is an eternal child at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, and counterbalanced, you have actresses of a certain age like Selma Hayek and Angelina Jolie,
Hmm.
who I thought were both wonderful in this film. I
Yep.
absolutely, and it's also, if you come into this from the comic, there's so many differences. Just
Yeah.
shed it. Just shed it. The basic story of why the Eternals are there and that they're deviants. That,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to reveal something, but let's just say there's connective tissue between those
Yeah.
two cultures, and they're here on Earth for a purpose. See, that carries over from the comics. Some of the characters, like Selma Hayek's, are gender flipped
Hmm.
from what we're used to in the comics. With in this age of Loki being anything, I think that's something people can handle now very easily. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a
Yeah.
non-issue. Um, Angelina Jolie, my God, when I'm watching this, I think, man, maybe they did miss the boat with her for Wonder Woman. I mean, she was regal. She was
Hmm.
a force to be reckoned with, even when she was just batting an eye. I and also that she worked well as part of an ensemble. This is somebody
Yeah.
who's consistently the lead in films. Age issues aside, she's younger than me. Hell, uh, don't call her old. Um,
Yep.
but she works so well in an
Hmm.
ensemble. And
Yeah.
same thing for Selma Hayek, even though there is a little bit of distinction with her being in a leadership role. But I never doubted her and the complexities that come with leading a team that is split up. She's
Hmm.
she's still the person that they would turn to when
Yeah.
something would go down, and we see what her role is, and when she's absent, the connotations that takes. I thought it was, with the exception of Richard Madden, I thought it was an exceptionally well cast film. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Um, and
he
Richard
was he
Madden
was.
playing Icarus.
I mean, he was serviceable, but
Hmm.
there were times where I was 3 steps ahead of him. That he
Yeah.
was that he was broadcasting too much. Um, and it's also kind of a thankless role because that is like what we initially perceived to be the Boy Scout, the Superman.
Hmm.
Um, and
they
and that's
there
and
were two DC. There were two DC
DC
illusions in
references,
this,
yes.
like very big DC references. Yeah, that were kind of like, whoa,
Yeah.
interesting. people read DC Comics and Marvel movies.
Yes.
That's kind of cool to know. Um,
But Don Lee, I thought was wonderful.
oh,
Even though it's a small part, I'd love to see where we go with Kit Harington and who he will eventually become.
as Dane, what
Whitman.
is this?
Whitman.
Dane Whitman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the way this movie was structured, I thought it was also interesting in that it's clearly an MCU film,
Mhm.
but you can go into it with such a modicum of information about the other MCU films. I have a very twisted perception. I know people who went into Infinity War and were lost
Mm.
for just because they hadn't seen everything. This is not
Yeah.
like that. We do have connective tissue with major events
Mhm.
that happen, and I think this is also a precursor to other major events.
Yes.
Uh, plain and simple. Uh, or at least the
This is
friggin'
definitely
cosmic rays. Um,
something.
something. Just as a way to opening the door to the characters that we have yet to see. But such an incredibly well directed film. That this is a family. It's a fractured family, but it's a family nonetheless. And I always had that feeling, no matter what the dynamics at play were. Um, I imagine this was a very pleasant shoot.
Yeah.
I had that feeling that that they were interesting, but again, with the dynamics that the director brings, I mean, there were so many. The word that just kept coming back to me was lyrical.
Mhm.
That it was a very lyrical take on the MCU, and
Yeah.
I have to say this has been my favorite MCU film since Guardians of the Galaxy.
Interesting.
I'm not one to rank stuff. Was Guardians before Winter Soldier? Winter Soldier was before that, right? I don't
Uh,
um,
they might have been the same year.
yeah, well, whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's been my favorite MCU film in a long time, just because, interestingly, because it was different. Um, but there's no way this wasn't an MCU film that that um, there was that vibe, from the word go, and
Yeah.
the reasons that we had never seen these characters before I thought was sensible, and was also a plot point. And I I want to see more of these characters. Almost certainly will, since space seems to be where everyone's headed right
Yeah.
now. So
Well, you kind of mentioned it, and every single movie now has to hit that family angle. But I think
yeah,
a lot of those films, it tends to be
family.
forced. Like
Yeah,
family. Yeah. I mean, the Fast and the Furious kind of way of like everybody's a family. It's like, sure, Vin,
yeah.
whatever. Um, but this movie kind of gives you the sense right at the beginning, before you even really know who all these people are, they fall into the type of role where they have that family connection, where they don't have to constantly say, we're family, we're family, family. They do mention it a few times, but it feels natural. It's like, yeah, these are all your brothers and sisters. Yes, there's some incestuous relationships there, but these are people that look to Ajak in sort of like the mother role almost. And I hate kind of putting Selma Hayek in that position, but her character is not just the leader, but also like she's their she's their patron, their
Yeah.
matriarch, whatever. She's the one who's in charge,
She's the
but she
administrator
also but
on
she
top of
also
all this.
takes
Yeah,
care of all of
yeah,
them. Like
yeah.
she cares for all of them in a way that they all understand, and they care for each other
Mhm.
in a very very powerfully put way, and I,
Yeah.
I like that.
And
I
I
thought that was
just
really
love the
interesting.
way that the film touched on so many issues,
Yeah.
whether, like as we say here with the family dynamics, but also touches on zealotry. It touches on
Hmm.
climate change. It touches on so many elements,
Yeah.
but never locks itself to that
Hmm.
being the main propulsion of the story. Uh, I,
Yeah.
I,
Let's. As in, like, let's hammer this message
Yeah,
home. You know, this is
yeah.
what it's like. It's
I
still
have
there's
to say, I'm not doing justice to how much I enjoyed this film
no,
with the
no.
way I'm
Uh,
vocalizing right now. I
I
really, really
definitely
liked it.
did want to mention because, of course, you know, this is and you know, being a primarily gay or queer podcast, we have to mention it. The character of Phaistos being the first openly gay or queer Marvel, you know, MCU hero.
In the films.
Not just
In the
in the
films.
films, being,
Thank
you
you,
know, just
Agents
being,
of Shield.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In in the films, where you're able to, like, they're a central character. They're not like, oh, hey, this guy who's played by one of the directors who's straight, who's sitting in the, you know, who's sitting in a therapy session with Captain America as the first gay. Like, no, this is a man who has a husband and they have a son together, and there's no turning the camera away when they like kiss. There's no like back of the head kiss. This is a full on front, you know, in the middle of the screen kiss between these two men, and it's believable. You understand that this relationship is more than just like, you know, we just got to give lip service, ha ha ha, to, you know, to queer couples. It's like, no, they've got a son together that they care about. Phaistos is a good dad. Like, this is something that,
Yeah.
you know, has to be provided. But they don't spend all this time on it. So it's more than a token, but it's less than a let's really give it to the gays. Let's really show how you know, proud we are. You know,
No, I mean, there
it
was a
feels
matter
natural.
of, yeah, there was a
Yeah,
matter of factness and an organic
yeah.
sensibility to it. And, um, you know,
And
the
I think
thing that
somebody like,
we've been striving for ages is for this
mhm,
to be a non-issue,
yes,
and this just sang of that. You know, I
yeah,
know Middle Eastern countries, there's issue. You know, I know there's different cultural issues outside of
hmm,
United States and Europe, North America and Europe, but it was perfectly played, perfectly
well, and
played.
I think also the director did this in a way too that makes it much more natural. And I think if it were another director,
Hmm.
it either could have been played like goofy or it could have been played super extra serious just because they're trying too hard. This is Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao. I mean, No Man Land, for what it was, definitely had a lot of subtle, you know, understandings and subtle presentations of these of people in, you know, as natural as possible.
Yeah.
And this is kind of how it came across, which is wonderful. That it was like, it was a, you know, a family that we could all kind of get behind, which is really cool. So yeah, I mean, also other than that, all the dudes in this were really hot. Can you name all 10 of the Eternals
Me,
that were in this movie? Yes.
the actors or the
List them
characters?
off. Let's just do the characters.
Okay, Ajax,
Hmm.
Icarus, Cersei, Sprite, Thena, Gilgamesh, the Scottish dude. Um, um, what's his
Well,
name?
Richard Madden was the so Icarus was kind of
No,
the Scottish
but
dude. So do you mean the Irish guy?
the Irish guy. Why can't I think of his name? I'll keep going. Um, Makari.
Hmm.
I will always call him Makari, but
Macri.
yeah. Phaistos, and who the hell did I miss there? Druig. Sorry, that was the name I couldn't think
Druig,
of.
who was the, yeah, it was the Irish one.
All right, and then Phaistos, and Kingo.
Yes, there you
Yeah, see,
go. You got them all. Woohoo!
sorry. You
And
know, we also had an actress who was deaf in a major role, and
Macari.
yeah, it's so many good things in this, and I also loved. It seems like Kirby doesn't really translate to film, and I don't know if you felt this, but didn't it feel like almost this was like more Magnola? The character designs and the action. I mean,
I
it seems like if Hellboy came walking in, it wouldn't have disrupted the flow that much.
I think the action was definitely more Mignola, but the costume designs, there's a lot of those kinds of like primary colors. Everybody has a primary color.
Yeah, but they're
There's a
so
lot of
muted.
true, but that's
Yeah,
Chloe Zhao. That's
yeah,
Chloe Zhao's design. So
yeah,
like the movie is darker, is more shadowed in
yeah,
most scenes. I actually saw it two different ways. I saw it 3D and it was really dark, and then I saw it in standard
yeah,
digital and it was still muted. But if you took away that filter,
yeah.
uh, bright green, bright blue, everybody's got like their primary color or their main color coding, and you've got circles and the way that Celestials are designed in the heads is very Kirby. The
That was, yeah,
bodies
yeah.
I'm seeing, I can see definitely Mignola
Yeah.
inspired there.
I also felt, just going through some other things, there were things I know I wanted to talk about. In the comic books, Gilgamesh is such a dud character. I mean, there's nothing to him. And there was so much nuance to the way Don Lee played him and how the things were set up in the script. And with him and Thena, I thought that was a beautiful way of a love affair without a romance, which some people do fall into in life. And uh, there were so many good things, and I can't speak enough about Angelina Jolie. I absolutely loved her in this. I absolutely loved her. I want a Thena film, just Thena, and I want her
Just
like,
her like just dancing around, slicing things,
well, yeah,
just
but like
so well.
in a weird place, like I don't know, like Montreal or something, just like a place that just like you wouldn't expect her to be, like or Seattle. you know.
Yeah.
And one thing I also love about this is because they are Eternals, you can play around with time. There's nothing preventing them from doing a flashback, where these characters and they do have references to various periods of time and
Yeah.
how they were active and how they were inactive sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, but I absolutely love this film. I'm not doing it justice the way that I'm talking about it because it's all it's disconnected the way I'm referring to things. But
Because
I
we don't
did
want to
think it
spoil
was
it too
one
much.
of because
We
it's
want you guys
frustrating
to see it.
because there is a what I think is a fairly big turnaround at a
Hmm.
point, which changes everything. This is also one of those things where now I can't say I've read all Eternal stuff in comic books,
Hmm.
but the Kirby stuff, which was coming out when I was 10, 11 years old, 9, 10, 11 years old, that sucks, man. That's like one of his worst books. I mean, there's some nice tricks in it, like Icarus is, clearly like the Orion counterpart in the He-Man, and as the series goes on, his importance is almost nil. There's
Yeah.
some interesting things that happen there. It's written in that it's a world that they know about Marvel characters through comics, the
Mm.
original 19 issues and the annual, but it's not connected to it yet. That happened a little later. Um, but if you're looking to the, I want to see what the source material. Be prepared, brother, because it it sucks.
I,
It's
well,
not Kirby at its best.
I think some of this was probably more inspired than with Gaiman's run several years
It
back.
was, but there were a lot of things that happened that they came in with when the Eternals were connected to Thor's storyline.
Mm,
In the late 70s and the early 80s, it was the Celestial War and the 80s series, which was when a number of these characters were actually introduced. So I do think that the Gaiman series kind of tied stuff up in a bow a bit, but a lot of those elements pre-existed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think
yeah.
probably
I
because
do think
Gaiman series.
the tone is much closer to the Gaiman Romita
Yeah.
Jr. run. That I will
Well,
agree. Yeah.
and also I think probably because it puts all the characters in the Gaiman run. It starts off everybody, nobody has memories. Nobody knows they're Eternals, and so they kind of have to go around and bring their memories back, jog people's memories. But everybody's got a life, so like they all have these lives that they're living as humans,
Mhm.
and I think that that's where this movie kind of looks at these characters. So they're not like in a floating fortress somewhere, or off-world or whatever. Like, they're just living as normal people,
Mhm.
in separate lives, which is kind of cool. So we have a couple people who've also jumped in. David Toby, hey David.
Mhm.
Well, if it ain't Furry Friday, yay.
Yeah.
Yes, fuzzy. And then we also have C-List E-Man, who's come in. Good evening, Bears, just stopping by. 3 weeks behind in comics. Eek. Yeah, I totally
know the
understand what
feeling,
that's like.
brother. I know the feeling.
Trust me, I know what that's like.
Here. But if you told me on Facebook, I posted a pic.
And he goes on to continue. He's really enjoying the current run of Eternals, which I'm not reading. I don't know if Bill, if you're reading.
No.
Right now.
I was waiting for that to be collected.
Okay.
Because I am interested. Because sometimes when you do have things that are contemporaneous, like Shang-Chi, there's alignment with what we're seeing in the films to some degree. And I always find that interesting. So at some point, I will take a look at the current series.
Yeah, we'll see if there's some some threads that they're kind of like weaving through.
I might get the first issue from Marvel Insider Points.
Okay.
Fairly soon. So.
Yeah. So and C-List hasn't seen the movie yet, but he might watch it this weekend with his family. So yeah, they don't drag you to Ghostbusters, then definitely see this one. Well, cool. Yeah. So I enjoyed it, and I think I don't want to speak for Caleb, but I think he also enjoyed it as well. Wish he was here to kind of throw his opinions in there, but.
I also see some other people watching. So hi, John Runyon. Hi, Steve Ziemkowski. And hello, Anthony Comita. So just wanted to say hi to you folks as well. And thank you for joining in.
Hello.
All right. So the name of the show is Comic Book Bears, and we talk about comic books. So let's get into that. Steve, tell us about a comic book that you're reading that you're digging.
So sometimes I randomly see a title that I'm just sort of like, what's that about? Like I know nothing about it. I just know the title, or something catches my eye on the wall, and I'm just sort of like, that looks like a wacky something. Maybe I'll just pick that up, just give it a shot. And that's exactly what happened with this book, the first one I'm going to talk about. What's the Furthest Place from Here? Big title, very interesting cover. This is actually, I think, the variant cover, the B cover for it. And this is actually written by Tyler Boss and Matthew Rosenberg, who also wrote Four Kids Walk Into a Bank, which I haven't read, but I know is amazing. Everybody keeps telling me to read it, so I'll after reading this, I will. And this is their foray into post-apocalyptic, I would say vision quests, maybe. It's very interesting. They, in this world of juveniles, because in this world there are no adults, and when you get to a certain age, then basically it's the end, you die. And one of the characters, the first character that we're introduced to, Proofrock, is at that age where he's just about ready to kick it. He's probably about maybe 19, 20, so ancient, obviously. And the other main character, Sid, who's on the cover here, who happens to be pregnant, which apparently is very strange in this post-apocalyptic world. They're part of a big gang called the Family. That live in a record store. So there's a lot of music illusions. One of the big things that they talk about is finding the album that defines you. And Sid's big album apparently is Hall & Oates. Trying to think which Hall & Oates. Private Eyes apparently is what defines her. And they kind of make fun of her for it. But some weird stuff happens. So they lost one of their fellow family members to age. He left, and that is the character of Slug. And yet, somehow, he shows up. He comes knocking at the door. He's been gone for a long period of time. We don't know how long, because he aged out. But now he's back, and he's clearly dying. But they don't know how he survived. In their mind, anybody who's over a certain age just goes and dies, and that's it. But Slug came back. and they're not sure what's going on. But the fact that he showed up kind of tripped a lot of wires in the area where where the family lives, and other gangs start showing up, wondering what's going on. Hey, you got an adult here. We need that adult. Like, you guys better give up the adult. So they have a big gang war. Meanwhile, while Slug is slowly dying while Sid is watching, and he's trying to tell her something about a big place where people live. So some mythical city, something, i.e., the goal for at least right now for the series. So they have a big memorial party for Slug after he dies, and the next day they find that Sid has disappeared, and not only that, but Slug's body has also disappeared. And it might be connected to these two strange women-looking creatures called the Strangers that have a very interesting connection to all of the young people, in that children aren't born to them. They show up. The Strangers bring them to the different gangs, and the gangs then raise them as part of the family. And then also when they die, when they age out, the Strangers go and take the bodies away. So there's a lot of interesting sort of supernatural elements to this, in the same way that it's also a post-apocalyptic and not very that post-apocalyptic kind of world. But very intriguing. And it's also an extremely thick book. I mean, these are, for a $5 book, you get a lot of story. It's like a 60 issue, definitely, a double size issue. So, I recommend picking it up. It's weird. It's interesting. If you've read Four Kids Walk Into a Bank and you loved it, you'll probably love this. But the art's interesting, the action is really cool, and the story has a lot of mystery to it that makes me want to read more. So, out by Image. This was the first issue. I think it is a 4-issue miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, give it a shot.
All right. Sounds interesting enough. Music and Logan's Run kind of aging out. It sounds like something I wouldn't mind reading at some point. I want to talk about a number of books, none of which I enjoyed.
Oh no!
But I want to keep this in a fun way. And it's not that I didn't enjoy them because they weren't quality books. Well, one, yeah. But all right, so let me get some background. Last month we had the final issue. This is the Doc Shaner variant cover of Strange Adventures number 12, written by Tom King with art by Mitch Gerards and Evan Doc Shaner, with Mitch Gerards taking part of the art chores and a sensible break with what Doc Shaner takes care of tonally. You can see that in one page here, explaining the difference. So what Strange Adventures was, basically, there's no real winners in war. There's no one who is unscathed, and nothing is really as it seems when you're talking about cultures in warfare. And not a happy landscape to provide a storyline for. It was very well done. I don't want to say it wasn't well done, but it did leave a very caustic and bitter taste in my mouth. I knew what was coming. I'm glad that this is Black Label and not necessarily canon, because poor Adam, poor Adam Strange. But there's a lot of nice Tom King-isms in there. It basically basically the last page is just like the first page of the series. So we do have an arc that is a completed circle. So there's some nice elements, but I told you what basically the story is about at its core, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth. I just was like, I want something different than this. I'm glad this exists. It's a quality work, but it wasn't going to put me in my happy place. And then I started thinking about that this wasn't the first time that they went somewhat dark with DC's cosmic heroes, and even some ways Hawkworld ties into this because that was a much more mature, much more nuanced depiction of Thanagar. So it's not a huge puddle jump. A couple years after Hawkworld, there was a series which I don't believe has been collected. It was in 3 prestige issues called Twilight. It was written by Howard Chaykin with art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. And it's weird because it's kind of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez doing Chaykin. It's a weird artistic vibe through this. And this is one of the most paranoid, bleak, edgy takes on cosmic heroes that you're ever going to see. They're really D-list. Apart from Tommy Tomorrow, who maybe like gets up to the C level. I mean, it's characters like Manhunter 2070 and Space Cabbie and Star Rovers. I mean, that very few people, apart from those that are steeped in DC lore, will know. Didn't matter. It was. There's another podcast that makes the case for good shaken, bad shaken. This was bad shaken, so I still had a bad taste in my mouth. And then I was remembering when we were recently at Baltimore Comic Con, and Tom King was mentioning that the original Adam Strange stories, though the concept is great, Man of Two Worlds, a lot of the story executions are pretty bad. So I went back to the source material. I took out my showcase volume of the earliest Adam Strange stories, and boy, oh boy, was Tom King right. I mean, these stories are whack, man. I mean, it's like the resolutions are almost like a half page, at the
Yeah.
end. It's there's this conflict that's going to affect Rand for years, and whether it be civil war or invaders, and then like something happens and it's all okay, and that leaves Adam free to Zeta beam back to Earth. They're not good. All right.
It was
I
it
mean,
was it sort of like just a basic device because they were he wasn't headlining like a full book. Like these were short stories.
well, after a point, there are full length stories in here. There
Okay.
were times in Mystery in Space where he had 2 stories in there, or he was the front story when Space Rangers run in Tales of the Unexpected ended.
Hmm.
He became the backup figure. So there are full length stories within the mix here, but
Okay.
they're just if you want that like uh, cosmic charm from that period, this really doesn't do it. I mean, they're really not well executed stories. And I know there are some Silver Age stories that are like I find the Flash really tough to get through. Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting with the Flash is like they were almost always split up. There was a Gardner Fox story and a John Broome story, and they're so
Hmm.
tonally different. But when you're reading them in sequence, it's confused. You really notice it. It's really strange. Um, the Silver Age Green Lantern stories, though, I love. I mean, they're
Yeah.
so off the wall. Some of the concepts regarding the Guardians and the other core members are so wacky
Oh yeah.
that you just fall for their charms. But this was, man, this was rough. I got through maybe here. I just couldn't keep going. And I don't want to be a downer, but it was interesting because here I was with a book that I would say was well executed, The Strange Adventures, put a bad taste in my mouth, but still sent me off to other stuff. It
Hmm.
still did that trick of making me seek out other stuff. The what I sought out wasn't satisfying, but it still did its trick. So I just thought that was worth commenting on.
Well, we got one comment here from James. He loved Garcia Lopez's art in the Twilight book, and I had never even heard of it. So
Yeah.
that's pretty good. So some
Yeah,
support
it's
there
just
for.
like so weird because like Tommy Tomorrow's almost like like the classic space cadet kind of character, and here he's like an autocrat, and goes from fascistic and then realizes he can't be a god. So what's the next best thing? Like the Antichrist. It's so layered, and like I
Interesting.
said, paranoid is the word, and it's I mean it's what like I said, just like with that. I mean, it is a beautiful thing with this. One of the characters from the Star Rovers effectively becomes a goddess, Carol, And her her conversation here, I mean, it's beautiful how he executes that with a series
Yeah.
of stories. I mean, there's beautiful art in here, but it's still Garcia Lopez doing Chake. It's weird. It's just weird.
Mm.
Just weird.
Well, kind of going back to Tom King and Cosmic, he's
Yeah.
done that before with Omega Men.
Yeah.
The last, I guess it was New 52, or maybe kind of like in that transition period.
Or whatever they
away from New
call that,
52.
DCU.
DCU.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that he did a miniseries with basically Kyle Rayner as the White Lantern, losing the White Lantern ring and then becoming a Green Lantern again, and all of them basically dying. And it is, not to spoil the series. It was one of the bleakest things that I read. And it's Tom King, and it's just basically just things go from bad to worse to worse to worse to worse to worse, and then everybody dies, and you're like, oh, okay. And it's interesting that he kind of used that, using all sorts of these characters that nobody really, has a great love for, with the exception of Kyle Rayner, and putting him in as almost the foil for how bleak all these other characters from the Omega Men are. And here taking a character that I don't want to say universally loved, but for the people who are nostalgic about, about him, to do what he did in Strange Adventures, to sort of like the history of the character, perception of the character, perception of the Ranth-Thanagar War, like all of that was very interesting. Still very bleak though, but at least he didn't do what he did in Omega Man. Well, not really. Anyway, but yeah. And I did have a comment about Showcase. Reading Silver Age Green Lantern in a Showcase format book is very hard to do.
It is,
because it's all black and white.
It is, and there are certain things with where the aspect of color is so important. Green Lantern is one. Legion of Superheroes is another.
Oh yeah.
The Legion of Superheroes is you don't get the full experience, you don't. But the reason I have these is like, they're the telephone book. That's what you go to. Don't have to pull out back issues. Don't have to spend a fortune on the hardcover reprints or Omniboo. And
go to Ollie's. You'll find tables full of the showcases.
If it was
for like
up to
$3.
me, this still would have been an ongoing line, and some I think are even better. I think Jonah Hex and the mystery titles, the horror titles from the 70s, Phantom Stranger and House of Mystery, they were wonderfully in this format.
I mean, like, it's the best way to get them
Legion,
sometimes.
I think, Green Lantern, Legion, and also interestingly, Supergirl. Supergirl is just plain out. Superman isn't so weird without color. Supergirl is weird without color.
Interesting.
So you just have to take a look at it. But I still love the format for what it is. I don't have any illusions that it's a plants, but for the quick read, or sometimes you just want to see what the hell did they say on that page? Like, what was special about that issue? Pull it out, put it back in. Yeah, love it. Marvel Essentials.
James also. Another person misses the Showcase and Essential lines so much, and I mean they're fun to have. They're cool.
I have all of the Showcase, the DC Showcase, and I have all of the Marvel Essentials except for the two that are really pricey now, which are Black Panther and Warlock. Those are really pricey, but everything else.
And why would Warlock be pricey now?
Oh, it's been pricey even before. They were two of the last ones printed, and the print runs are like they're like 2,000.
Nothing.
Yeah, there's like nothing of it. Yeah, so
that's too bad.
Yep. Well, we went off into Showcase and Marvel Essentials.
Showcase World.
If you look on my page, there's some pictures of stuff. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool in sequence. And
they're very neat.
Yeah.
I have one other book to talk about.
Okay.
This one is a shock. It's a Valiant book.
Okay, cool.
Really
We're talking a lot about Valiant offline this week, weren't we?
Offline, yes.
Yeah.
Also because I finally finished the Ninjak run
Mhm.
with art by Javier Pulido, who I do have to sadly say, in issue number 4, he did not finish the art in that book, so it was finished actually by another artist that did not does not imitate the style. The
Yeah.
colors, yes, but the style, no. So it was kind of jarring. But not that it was bad. It was jarring after getting so used to how cool Polito's art was with Ninjak, and I thought it was a really great interpretation of of the style of the character. But I am talking about something that has made a comeback, and that is Harbinger. In this case, the Harbinger #1, focusing specifically on Peter Stanchek, who has been missing in action for the past 4 years, 3 years maybe, of Valiant Universe timeline. Um, and this book by co-written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. Also has art by Robbie Rodriguez, colors, of course, by Rico Renzi, who did such a great job together on previously known as Spider Gwen, now Ghost Spider. They do a really great job bringing this character to life, and I think Rodriguez art really works because it is very dynamic. There's a lot of definite action happening in every page when he draws characters there. And it's also really interesting too, just a weird fact, lettering by Hassan Otsume Ihao, who is also the same person who did the lettering for this book. So interesting. But I guess I'm building up a library of Hassan lettered books. But this is a really interesting return for Peter Stanchek. So the character, of course, is one of the 2 most powerful human characters in the Valiant universe. The other one being Toyo Harada, who was killed off a few years ago. And Peter Stanchek was somewhere off in the universe, just in a bubble floating around, being omniscient or whatever. Has come back to Earth, and he no longer has memories. He doesn't remember who he is. Other than the fact he knows his name, he knows basic stuff, but doesn't know what he is and what happened for the past several years. So the Earth that he comes back to is extremely different. Activated psiots are all over the place. The governments have created technology to counter a lot of psiots, and so there's a lot of anti-psiot tech that's out there. People are terrified of Peter Stanchek because of all the destruction that he was part of when he was active previously. So he shows up with no memory, but people know who he is, and he essentially has to run for his life through the streets of Chicago until he gets to a small part of town that apparently has been repurposed as Psiot Town. And it's just filled with people with powers. They have businesses, they have places to live. Everything's very much based around, psiots in a very Genosha kind of way. That this sort of area of Chicago is now just a psiot village. However, while he's there and getting to sort of center himself and get to know some of the people there, they're attacked, and he's attacked by a group that, with some of their powers, they basically steal people and take their memories and then utilize their powers. And Peter thinks that, hey, this is the reason why I cannot remember things. I need to figure out what's going on. Because he can't remember his other friends from Harbinger. He can't remember the team. And definitely needs to get his memories back. So kind of kicks it off. It's very cool. It's definitely starting a really cool story. I'm excited to continue reading it. Because Valiant really hasn't had a ton of stuff coming out the past year. So I'm really excited for this. It's going to be a 5-issue, at least this arc is going to be 5 issues. So giving it a shot. Hopefully it'll continue to be cool.
Okay, cool. So I'm talking again about DC. Main reason is that I got my DCBS box in on Tuesday, and I had 77 DC comics that I have to get through. 5 weeks worth of stories, just a few. And I read what I usually do. This is what I usually do. is I take the comics and you do this as well. You know, you do the check to make sure that everything's in there, and every once in a while
Yep.
it's a surprise. But most of the time everything evens out. So
My
I had
surprise is
all
Marjorie Finnegan #1
yeah
every time.
yeah. So I had all the my best surprise was an Overwatch
Oh,
Funko. Yeah. I was like,
oh,
what? Where the hell is it? I Yeah, there've been some mysteries. When New 52 started, have like 2 issues bagged and bordered of Suicide Squad and Superboy #1. I didn't order them, you know. Mm,
oh.
Just
Well,
yeah, thank you. And then when
there
you
you go.
contact them, they just I'll just keep them. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, always happens. Okay, so anyway, enough about DCBS. So I got my books in, and what I usually do is I split the books up, and I still read books in sequence as best as I can.
Hmm.
So I'll take the books that were from the first week of October. Second week of October will be our next run of reading and stuff. So I knew with the show though we couldn't do that. So I figured there were books that Caleb wanted to talk about. So I did read Superman Son of Kal-El and the Urban Legends issue 8. Batman Urban Legends issue 8. Caleb's not here, so we don't have to talk about those. So the books that I did choose to read between Tuesday and tonight were all #1s. I just went through the #1s that we had that weren't one shots. So I had something to talk about, and I thought, well, I can talk about one, or I could just talk about a bunch of them. So I'll just do this quick, and they were all pretty good. There wasn't any clunker in there. That's nice to see. Task Force Z. It seems Matthew Rosenberg is going to factor in a lot tonight. um, with some of the situations in Gotham post aid, both the post 8A when Arkham Asylum came down in flames. There is a shadowy organization called Project Halperin, which is basically Shanghai Red Hood here, uh, and they are apprehending, some of the escapees from A Day, and who they are using are zombified versions of dead Batman villains. They have to be recently dead because there's a resin called the Lazarus resin, which will revive them. And the resins also kind of keep them in line, so they are compliant. So Red Hood leads the team of a zombie Bane, and a zombie Mr. Bloom. She's not in this yet. Zombie Man Bat and a zombie Arkham Knight. So in the first issue, we have Crazy Quilt, a real D-list villain, is one of the escapees. They are this Project Halperin sends out Task Force Z, and they apprehend the villains, and they try to do that later with Mister Freeze, and things go to shit, and that's where we end the issue. But it was fun. Um, Continuing on that line, Arkham City: The Order of the World. This is a wonderful Batman name. It's from the perspective of Jocasta Joy, who is a doctor at Arkham Asylum, and it's a somewhat similar situation. She's keeping tabs on some of the escapees, and as she is and as she's discussing it, not all of these escapees are the first thing they're going to do is rob a bank and take on Batman. Some of them just want to hide and live out lives. We have a wonderful scene where Nocturna and Dr. Phosphorus are hiding out in an apartment, and they just want to be left alone. They're ordering their food through Uber Eats. They're uh, they're using Dr. Phosphorus's abilities to look at the apartment next to them and kind of match their lifestyle. It's pretty nice. I wish the best for them. Another situation where you are getting D-list villains, or maybe a little higher, like Professor Pig or Mad Hatter. In here, the Ten-Eyed Man has a particular role in it, and some of these escapees, the first that gets caught is Ratcatcher, and he is talking about the ghost of Amadeus Arkham is commanding him to do certain things. And that has been a consistent issue with some of the escapees. So the psychologist and there are some police that she's working with are keeping tabs. She's not necessarily telling the police everything because she does think that some of these people would be less of a threat to society if they would just stayed on the run and didn't commit crimes. But it was an interesting take on post 8A stuff. Dark Knights of Steel, written by Tom Taylor with art by last name is Putri, art and color by Yasmin Putri, and this is kind of a Dungeon Dragons take, at least, or a Camelot-y take on the DC heroes. We have the House of L, which is led by Jor-El and Lara, and it's actually Superman who a Kal-El that comes from another planet to theirs. So an interesting take on what normally are the Kents role turn out to be Jor-El and Lara. It's this is like one of these medievalish settings. There's a rival house, which is the House of Thunder and Storm, which is led by a version of Jefferson Pierce. There is a spy in the realm, who is a banshee, which means Black Canary, and the trusted. Instead of sending Kal-El because he basically has godlike powers, and Jor-El and Lara are worried about what that would do to the population. That perception of people seeing that is they send their closest lieutenant confidant, who is young Bruce Wayne, and he has Robins that are basically his army. So it's an interesting take. It's not really my jam, but art's nice, cover's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So Dark Knights of Steel, that's going to be a 6-issue series, 12-issue series. Sorry, another 12-issue series. Hey, it worked with Deceased, DC versus Vampires. This was much better than I thought it would be. This is written by James Tinian and again Matthew Rosenberg co-writing it. The art is by. I'm so sorry. I had these names in front of mind when it started, and I don't have it. Otto Schmidt does art and color in this. And what we have in DC versus Vampires is the character Andrew Robinson, I Vampire, appears at the Hall of Justice, and it seems that through a series of events involving his former love, who was the queen of the vampires, she has been murdered, and the trail led to the Legion of Doom. So, um, there are vampires being killed, but there are also vampires that are surviving, and they are bringing people into their realm, including what is the most terrifying thing: a vampire version of Gorilla God. Trust me, it's pretty terrifying. So, because Lex Luthor's always a step or two ahead, he tells Andrew when he discovers the trail and sees all these dead vampires within the Legion of Doom's headquarters, Lex Luthor sends him to the Hall of Justice, but nothing is as it seems. So it was fun. Total cash in, total,
and
total
I haven't
gimmick.
seen Andrew Robinson since. Well, I mean, the I Vampire series that started with the New 52,
Yeah.
I think it only lasted 8 issues, but they did have a really cool crossover with Justice League Dark.
And he
That
stayed
was
around a
a lot of
little
fun.
bit. He stayed around a little
Yeah,
bit in that.
he stuck around a
Um,
bit,
I
but
do think
yeah,
Vampire lasted a bit longer than you think, though. I think they
did
did
he?
have a change in creative team, but I do think it was more than 8 issues.
Hmm.
Take a look into that. Another new issue, and this was probably my favorite of them, Nubia and the Amazons, which was co-written by Stephanie Williams and Vita Elia, with art by Stephanie Williams did the script with pencils by Althea Martinez, so a bunch of LGBT names. And where we are right now, this is current day. Nubia is the current queen of Themyscira because Hippolyta is basically serving as Wonder Woman in the Justice League right now. And Nubia first appeared from the Well of Souls, which was where women who were wronged by men are reborn as Amazons. This has been a consistent story with the Amazonian legend. Apart from the first ones that Apollo brought to the island, and there. So after centuries, a bunch of new Amazons are appearing out of this well. It's believed that it's tied to the mood of whoever the current queen is. So since Nubia is the current queen and she's new in that position, maybe she's looking for companionship. So they're welcoming these sisters. Um, but there are Amazons that think this is the harbinger of something really dire. And a vision that one of them has offers us some really scary notions of stuff that might be ahead for them. This was probably my favorite of the stories. Really good art, really engaging. Like Diana crying and animals and fire, and so it's really nice stuff. And not that I want to see that, but I do want to see it executed nicely. Uh, this was not what I expected. Aquaman, Green Arrow, Deep Target #1.
Huh.
So there is a strange organization that is what we've seen so far is they are reanimating dinosaurs. So that happened. We don't know exactly what this organization doing, but they're up to other stuff. And one of the things that they apparently did was a body switch between Arthur Curry and Oliver Queen. So at the beginning of the story, we find Arthur is the king of Atlantis, at least serving in that position, and that Arthur finds himself a wealthy man with bows and arrows. So they both know something's up. So it's like a classic team up story. Arthur goes down to Atlantis to figure out. They fight because you can't have a team up story without a fight. And they realize, hey, I didn't do this, you didn't do this. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Did
So
they? Was there sort of like a weird monkey idol involved?
no,
Did
no, no,
they
no.
sort of
But
like
it's still
look at each other and say, "I
only the
wish I
first
had your
issue.
life"?
It's only the first issue, and there's this mysterious organization called Scorpio that appears to be behind this. So we'll see where
Hmm.
that goes. This wasn't what I expected, but it was fun. And Catwoman, Lonely City. This was good too.
Hmm.
Written and drawn by Cliff Chang, and it's the story of Selena Kyle 10 years after she's been released from prison for the murder of Batman. So the Gotham City that she comes to, Harvey Dent is the mayor. Uh, During the events that were surrounding the chaos that was going on in Gotham, there basically was a redemption for him, or at least at the outset, that's what it appears like. And Selena's released from prison, so she's going to her old haunts, and she's thinking, well, I can just pick my life up where it started, but things are different. The cash system is different. They're using G cards instead of cash often. So that's going to be a problem with her. She has a meeting with Penguin, who basically tells her, look, you're not who you used to be. You have back spasms, you have bad knees, and not great traits for a cat burglar. um, but as she's going through her exploration of where Gotham is now, it's obvious that there are things at play that may have been um, an influence of the events that sent her up the river. She breaks into wonderful scene where she breaks into Wayne Manor, and she delivers flowers to the graves of Bruce and Dick Grayson and Alfred. Really nice touch, but it's also being monitored by a security force, so that even that tender moment has to be short-lived. She's telling people, including where Barbara Gordon is, who's a councilwoman, that this is not where this is not what happened. I did not do this. So she decides what she's going to do is break into the Batcave. She's going to she's going to be a thief and go into the Batcave and try to get some information. Before Bruce died, she was whispering to her to keep in mind Orpheus. So she doesn't know what Orpheus means. She's going to go find out. So that's part of Black Label, and that's the larger size Black Label. And then I'll bring you into this, Steve, that this was a book that yes, thank you, James. Yeah, Catwoman Lonely City is really good. Chink's art is always amazing. Well, I was surprised how good his script is. Absolutely. This felt like a seasoned writer. Yeah, it was very good. And then this last book, another Tom King book with art by Greg Smallwood, Human Target, the first issue. So, Steve, I know you read this. What did you think of this?
I loved it.
Yep,
I loved it.
Loved it.
Just I mean, artwork alone is fantastic. I mean, just sort of like this, these bright colors, almost like a pencil sketch style of drawing that is really great. Get some wonderful lines in there.
This page where he takes down the attacker.
Crack. Oh yeah,
love that
crack right in the back. Just like little things here where you get to see the lines on his face and his neck, and as he's talking with Dr. Midnight. I thought this book was great, and I'm not even a Human Target fan. Like I don't have any history whatsoever with the character. I haven't read any of the previous comics with him. But he's a lot of fun. And I never watched the show. I did not watch the show, even though I had a little bit of a crush on the guy who played Human Target.
I'm surprised between him and Chi McBride, you wouldn't be watching this?
Yeah, I know, but it also didn't. It had 2 short seasons. It did also have what's her face from Battlestar Galactica originally.
She got annoying though. She was annoying. Mr. Chance. Mr. Chance.
I just didn't watch it.
Chance. Yeah.
But beautiful, beautiful book, and the story's great too. I like how Tom King does what he always does when he writes these types of limited series, where he starts at the end and then shows you the beginning.
Yeah, and we're saying what the storyline is here is that Human Target, Christopher Chance, has been engaged to. And this is the classic Human Target. He takes the place of other people to figure out mysteries. And in this one, he takes the place of Lex Luthor. But as this is going, it turns out he was poisoned. So he finds out from Dr. Midnight, who is basically the doctor for all the superheroes, and I love that element that they have there, that the radiation, which apparently was initially they thought was meant for Lex Luthor, but now there's some question about that, generates from, and I love this 2-page spread, Justice League International.
Yeah.
So, and you see that here. You see that here. So, and I love that bit where Dr. Midnight wants to bring Batman in. It's like, no, I'm a detective too. This
is my
It was really well done. I know that Ice has a substantial role in the series as it goes on. Greg Smallwood's art was wonderful. I love the take on Lex Luthor here. Just even in the short line, even in small lines, who the hell schedules a press conference for 6 a.m.?
What kind of monster
does that? Yeah, but this one was really good. So, a bunch of pretty good number ones. Of I think they're all limited series. Yeah, I don't think there's any ongoings here. But it was a novel way of attacking this pile here. Let me see if I can just pick it up without. Oh, Titans United. That one I didn't read. I should have read that, but yeah, that's.
Oh, it's just a few.
Yeah, just books. A few there,
including
those. Oh my God, these 100-pagers. The Wonder Woman 80th and Are You Afraid of Darkseid? Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. The 80th anniversary. I have the Jen Bartel cover, where it's all of the costumes. Not all of them, but a good number of the costumes.
Yeah, mine is Amy Reeder. I got the Amy Reeder cover.
Nice. Yeah. They're so pretty.
Yep.
There's so many Wonder Woman books right now. There's so many of them. The one thing that I haven't
it is
seen
their 80th
yet.
anniversary. It is their
It
80th
is,
anniversary.
exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing that I haven't seen, though, was Wonder Woman Historia.
Which I think just came out today.
Did it? Because I know it was originally set for October.
Yeah, that just came out today, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong. If James is watching, he'll know.
He'll know.
He'll know.
James will know.
But I believe that just came out. Well, not today, but Tuesday here.
Yeah. Oh, and you were right about I, Vampire. It lasted for 20 issues.
Yep.
Not 8. For some reason, I thought it had been killed off in like the first wave, or I should say the second wave of books.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Joshua Dicehart was the writer, and I think he left after 8 issues. It is very much a tonal shift.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's what happened there. And there were of books like Hawk and Dove and Black Hawks. There were a bunch that there were a bunch of books that were canceled in that first wave.
And then the second wave had books like Dial H. There were a bunch that started, right?
Yeah,
sort of like
but there was
two.
But even books that did survive had very big tonal shifts. Demon Knights had a very big shift. Justice League Dark, for that matter, with Peter Milligan living. Historia comes out at the 30s. So what came out this week? There was a book. There was a #1 that I think that came out. Eternal? I don't know. I don't have to figure it out.
There was a Wonder Woman Eternal.
I'm so good.
I think
something came out this week. Yeah.
But yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Historia is the Phil Jimenez
Pseudoconic.
Yeah, that one I'm really looking forward to. Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
That's why I was kind of disappointed, because I was like, I thought it, like, all the advertisements prior to it had been, that it would come out on the 30th, and I knew I would have gotten it if it came out in October. I would have gotten it at some point, but nope. Nothing.
You also have to keep in mind we are contending with paper shortages, and apparently things are going to get really weird for about 2 months in February and March, where there might be like 3-month gaps with some books. Hopefully we're seeing the end of this. It seems the shipping lines are getting freed up a bit, though some of the footage from that San Diego pier is a little bit distressing.
I love the idea that why don't you just park the ship somewhere else? Like, why don't you just go to a different port? It's like, yeah, but then how do you get the stuff there down to where it needs to be? The reason it's coming in that port is because where it needs to go is really close, usually. So.
Wow, you almost sound like somebody who works in traffic and shipping.
Yes.
Yeah.
So trust me, when somebody says, well, I don't want it to go into New York, I'll just have it go into Miami. Okay. And then you'll have to figure out how to get it from Miami all the way back up to New York, where it needs to be.
All right. Yeah. Well, the clock is telling us it's time to start wrapping up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something that's very similar. We woof at a particular comic book or film or TV program or charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week is a new TV series, surprise, that just came out 2 days ago on Hulu in the US, called Hit Monkey. It is a Marvel series. It is based on the comic book of the same name, which I believe is collected as a graphic novel. I think the series itself was only like a mini. It was like maybe 3 issues with a one shot or something like that. It wasn't really a huge book. Written by Daniel Way, with art by Dalibor Talajic. This series is great. It's the last series that Jeff Loeb was producing for the TV, the Marvel TV group.
Yeah.
And it's not, MCU connected in any way. Well, what's really interesting, it has some great cameos from Lady Bullseye, as well as Silver Samurai. So we got a mutant in there as well, and some other really great characters that pop up. But it is absolutely fantastic. The art is really cool. It takes place fully in Japan, and all the characters are essentially playing Japanese nationals, with the exception of Bryce the Hitman from America, played by Jason Sudeikis, who, if you've watched anything of Ted Lasso, watching this right afterwards would give you such cognitive dissonance, because his character is absolutely 180 degrees in the opposite direction, full asshole. But Hitmonkey himself is cute, adorable, and has some really bloody kills. I just love the series. It's gory, so be aware of that. Animated gore, but it is funny. The action's wonderful. The art fits it so well. And it really has some great characters and wonderful voice acting. George Takei is in it, Olivia Munn. Fred Tatasciore actually is the voice of Hitmonkey, who does nothing but, ooks and grunts. So I'm like, good job, Fred.
So it's the Hulu model where it's one episode every week, right?
No, all 10 episodes have been released at once.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
if you want, you can watch all 10. I've watched 9 with the last episode still to go.
Okay.
The end, part 2. But yeah, it's fantastic. It's one long story, and just is fantastic. So
yeah,
recommend
usually
it.
Hulu is Hulu's sequences. They drop things and
Weekly, sort of like a standard broadcast. But
it was interesting you brought that up, because Jeff Loeb, this is his first DC work in over 12, 13 years, I think.
Yeah.
So Long Halloween special. I'm torn with Jeff Loeb because he seems like a real asshole, but I love his work. I love his writing style of that, coming from the title character perspectives. I mean, there's interviews with him that the word balloon interview with him is so off-putting. It's just,
Ooh.
We get it. You're a rich kid who lucked out in a career. We get it. But I do think he's very talented. It's one of those situations where, like, I wouldn't want to know him, but I want to see more work from him. So
yeah.
And I just don't get it. It's like every seriously, every TV project he was part of went over budget, like every single one. And I don't know how you keep your job. I don't understand that.
Technically, he didn't. This is his last work, and he's been removed completely. When Feiga brought all of Marvel TV in house with the whole move to Disney Plus and all of that, and it was this series and MODOK that were the last 2 series that Jeff Loeb was involved in, and both of them were animated. MODOK, stop motion, clay. And this one,
and I guess the last live action would have been Hellstrom.
Hellstrom.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's it's an interesting send off, because I think that this is head and shoulders better than MODOK was in terms of consistent humor. MODOK had tons of great cameos and some great goofy stuff, but this one is a pretty consistent storyline that is riveting. You don't want to stop when you start watching.
Okay. My Wolf of the Week goes out to what I eventually decided was a film. Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. Next year, I bought my ticket. I'm going to see the Hollies, which was a band that were contemporaries of the Beatles, and there always has been a Hollies incarnation since 1963. They've never dissolved. And they're playing the United States as part of their 60th anniversary. I mean, that's insane. So this is probably my only chance to see them. There were a couple times there, but it just didn't happen. They don't play the U.S. hardly ever, so I jumped on the chance to get a ticket. And for people to familiarize themselves with the Hollies, there's some people that know them basically from Graham Nash, who later on had a substantial career with Crosby, Stills and Nash and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But Manchester group. So what I decided to go with is a film, which is The Hollies, Look Through Any Window, 1963 to 1975, which was their main period of activity. This is a 2-hour documentary. Now I have, because I'm me, the home media version, but any of y'all can go to Roku or Tubi or FilmRise, and I believe Amazon Prime and IMDb TV, and you can see this film for free. Any of you. It's 2 hours long, which is much longer than some of these efforts are. You have videos of some of their amazing singles like Bus Stop and On a Carousel and Carrie Ann and King Midas in Reverse and He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. I mean, just great music. Interviews with all the main members like Graham Nash, Alan Clark, and Tony Hicks and Bobby Elliott. Tony and Bobby are still in the band right now. And it's interesting, that we have this storied vision of Manchester groups, and a lot of the narratives basically start with Buzzcocks, go to Joy Division, New Order, Manchester scene, acts like Stone Roses and Spiral Carpets, then onto Oasis. That's the narrative, but the music in Britain, rock music from Manchester, started with them effectively. So really nice documentary. Lots of great music. Weren't the greatest live band, I'm gonna be honest with you. Some of the live moments are a bit shaky, and some of them are worked with the problematic technology of the 60s as well. We didn't have Marshall stacks until much later, so some of the live performances are a bit tinny, but I do think the songs and the personality of the band members comes through. So that's my wolf of the week. The Hollies, Look Through Any Window, 1963 to 1975.
Cool.
All right. Well, we're wrapping this up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so. By sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you're watching us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and please leave a nice comment. We're still trying to build a presence on that platform, and any positive influence we get would be greatly appreciated. And also for those of you that stuck with us watching through the Facebook Live, we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate you coming back week after week. It helps us go. We look forward to that every week. We'd be doing this anyway. We did it for 7 years before that, before there was any video component. But we do appreciate you chiming in and leaving comments. It's greatly appreciated. How many times can I say appreciated?
I appreciate how much you appreciate it.
I know it's appreciated. And let me appreciate, while we're talking about appreciation, that all right, we'll stop it right now. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Probably 2 weeks. We're going to take a break for Thanksgiving. We'll see you week after 2 weeks from now. That's the easiest way to say it. 2 weeks from now. Take care, everyone.
Take it easy. Bye-bye. Woof, boom.